Hey there guys, it's Eileen. Today is Tuesday, 6, let me hang on a second there, 4, 5, 6, yes, 6th of October, and I want to come on with probably gonna be a mixture of different subjects, all sorts of woven together. I hope I won't take forever to do this, because it would be nice for a change to not have, it's complicated. The thing is that there's energy work updates that I want to put out there as well, and it is all very tightly woven together. The thing is that I'm actually at the moment sort of moving back and forth between energy work processes and things that are, to me at least, interesting and relevant, and that they actually affect me. Energy work affects me in particular ways. Meditation, clearing of negative energies and things like that. Past lives stuff is in there as well. There's a whole lot of stuff that you can't really see. And then on the other side there is the narcissism set of experiences, and it's all very tightly woven together, and it seems like everything I do and encounter and think about is connected to this process. It seems to me like I am in the middle myself of a process that has been going on for all of 2020 and has been intensifying, especially over the past 2 or 3 months or so, that has to do with facing from a stronger position vibrationally and so also emotionally this narcissist world that I actually grew up in, that I know, that I have experienced as a, I've been on the receiving end of that approach to life, and I'm also finding out more and more, and hearing back from people and so on and so forth, that I'm not the only one. I'm coming to some conclusions which are like astounding to me. One of which is that what I've been through, and not necessarily what I personally have been through in the way that I've experienced it in my life, all put together, but where I come from, the scenarios, the approaches. Gosh, how can you be general about these things? The shit. It turns out that it's mostly textbook shit. So there. It turns out that the person that I'm not going to refer to explicitly anymore, I think, or at least not often, that has or had the impact in my life of a textbook narcissist, that is actually a very it looks like he's just checking all the boxes, and there isn't really what I believed, what I used to believe, what almost, is one of my own narcissist checks right there, is that I used to think I was special. I used to think I was special because I used to think we were special. And so, yeah. So, it's really interesting to me how doing energy work from two sides, basically. I will go into that a bit for now, and then maybe go on to the narcissism intel that I've gotten, that I've obtained recently in a bit more detail, and then I'll just close up. So there's going to be just a witchy check-in with a bit of Tumo and a bit of, everything. A bit of everything, okay? In terms of energy work I've been doing recently, I've been doing Tumo again. I've found that actually doing Tumo properly, and that there's more, if you don't know what Tumo is, there's more on my channel. There's a playlist that has to do with this Tibetan Kundalini Yoga approach that I've been using since January, late January this year, for myself, on my own, with no tutor, nothing. And I've found actually that I can do this quite fine. I can do this, put it into practice. I have to check in with myself, and I had to learn how to do it, but that's actually quite possible to practice Tumo by yourself. There's that. There have been a couple of developments. What I've found is that the Tumo energy actually stabilizes in your underbelly if you introduce Kundalini energy, Shakti energy in your underbelly. Turns out that that's actually where that happens, is an area that is known in Chinese medicine as the lower dantian. So that is like a source of power in Chinese medicine, in Tai Chi and Qigong approaches, where that's looked at, except they don't work with Shakti Kundalini type approaches at all. So really interesting how these things are sort of, you have to garner the intel from wherever you can find it and potentially, spin it all together into something that you can use, which is what I've been doing. So my friend practices, does a lot of Chinese, gymnastics and Tai Chi and that kind of thing. And she we were talking about Tumo and what it does, and how you do this, and this area where you at first sort of focus all your Kundalini energy is this lower dantian, so in the underbelly, but it's sort of doesn't involve the genital and the sexual organs at all. It doesn't. The idea is to not get the energy into there, because then it's used for sexual purposes, right? So you want it to sit sort of halfway between, for a woman, between the womb area and the navel, in between there, and hold it there for until it accumulates in a way and intensifies, and you can really feel that. It feels very hot. You can feel it as a glowing, a strongly glowing area. If you do that regularly, after a while, it transforms. And this is the big secret about Tumo, which I think is worth shouting about, and I will continue, doing that, is that what you do is, in this manner, you actually incorporate your Shakti energy that is yours, that's personal to you, into your body. I think anybody can really do this. I'm assuming here. The thing is that it will probably work less well, or you will not be able to focus as well on it if there are some, if there are health issues of whatever kind, there will be resistance. So it's a long-term process, and with, applying yourself to this again and again, if it appeals to you, it does so for a reason. The ocean chose you for a reason, kind of thing. So then you should try, to focus on it and to get this going. This is just a little short summary. What then happens, what I've found, is that after a while, this Tumo energy starts, it becomes different. It changes inside you, and it takes over parts of your system, and that feels really good. You can feel it. It's really pleasant. It feels invigorating, and it is like yoga in a way. It's or a long walk in the forest, or it's really it gives you life. So that's really excellent. You don't do this only for that. Only if you could feel how good it feels. That's what you would do it for. Definitely. I've noticed that with the expansion of that effect, this sense of this heat bubble inside your body starting to grow, there are changes in all sorts of ranges in all sorts of areas inside me. I should be talking about, because this is what I'm experiencing. Changes to how I feel and how I think, and even what I choose. Not that much, but I find that I experience life differently. Life is more real to me. It's more direct. There's more direct experience. There's less, treadmill going on in my brain, things like that. And it's more magical in a way. So that's totally positive to me. It's very, it doesn't solve my problems for me. If I have problems with people, if I have things that I have to sort out, I still have to think about things a lot and do just like everybody else, right? So, but I do feel that it's very liberating, and the hot area that I was mentioning just now, this whole hot air bubble that's inside me, has expanded and come to my third chakra, my solar plexus area as well. And I felt that it is changing in there as well now, definitely. I have had the experience before the summer, a few times where it was like tentative, the approach, because apparently there was too much tension in my life and there were things that were too complicated for me to make this move. By now I'm relaxed enough. Essential to this whole tale is relaxation. For the Shakti energy to come into your body through your root chakra, into your through your tailbone, basically your tailbone area, is a question only of one thing only, and that is to be relaxed enough for it to enter. And then after that, it is a matter of getting to know it, getting to know how it feels like, how to interact with it, and so on and so forth. So that is, with this expansion, much more clear and more, I would say, more permanent in my solar plexus area, and also up here a bit more. I start to feel more confident, I think, in the sense that I am apparently able to tackle this whole narcissism world. All that is tied in. That's one of the moments where it just goes, oop, all of a sudden over to all that side of things. There's a parallel path to this in terms of energy work that has to do with white light. I've talked about white light on my channel also quite a lot. It turns out that the interaction between white light up there and earth vibrations down there is actually a Kabbalah thing that I didn't know about. So maybe I've been, reeling that in from a past life, just like all the other things. I have no clue. I have no real information or anything, that I've actually seen or experienced properly that I could, I don't know about that. White light is a divine, what I call a divine tool that I use, that I call in for help whenever things get really heavy in my life. When I feel myself getting really heavy, when I feel that I can't think or work, when I have no focus, when I lose my joy, also my creativity, things like that. It's a different meditation technique. I won't go into all the details because otherwise we're here forever. But it's a way of asking for, a deep cleanse, as it were, from a realm that is impersonal, that can take care of every kind of energy that I'm worried about, that is bothering me, and so on and so forth. So yesterday evening I did another deep white light session. It was really necessary because I was completely clogged up. I had had my period, which is normally after a couple of days, all that is sorted out, I tend to feel normal again. I tend to feel, energized, and my body has done its own cleansing and all that's fine. And I wasn't. I was really badly. I was feeling like I was moving. Basically, I felt I was wanting to show you my wool, what my wool is like, that I'm spinning with. It's like this big, massive lump of fibers and you can't see through it, and it's very, very dense and compacted, almost like felt in a way. And I was in the middle of that, and I couldn't get out. I couldn't really, it's very hard to describe. It is not emotional in the sense other than I don't have any energy. Like I said, I don't have any energy. I can't think properly. Doesn't matter how much I go outside, whether I walk outside for fresh air, etc. I do all those things. I get my vitamins, get my vegetables and all that stuff. Normally after a while, it will sort itself out after a while anyway. But I was feeling, again, for, I think this is the third time that I've done a proper white light session for, in the context of this process this path that I've been on, this path that has led me to come closer and closer to information about the narcissist world, right? Because that's this sense of being shut in is an expression of that world as it comes to me, as I have felt it, as I have experienced it in the past days and weeks. So it was a deep session. It was a deep, it was a lot of work. And because white light only works to the extent that you let it, so sometimes you just have to keep asking and keep at it and, find out where the trouble it really comes from. And what was interesting to me to see was that there is, I hope you have already heard me talk about the Earth Star chakra, which is the chakra that sits beneath your feet in the floor right there. It is like a number 8 chakra, depends what your numbering is going to be. It is another chakra separate from the 7 that we're familiar with right here. It sits in the floor beneath your feet, in the middle right there. And it's a very important and very interesting channel actually for earth energies. If you treat it with white light regularly, your Kundalini energy is going to come up a lot easier and better. It's nice for the flow, the connection to the earth feels much more open, etc., and so on and so forth. So I recommend that kind of a process anytime. I was feeling that this whole sort of felted, matted bundle of fibers that I was surrounded by, that was sort of holding me prisoner, was coming from there, from my Earth Star chakra, and was sort of rooted there. And it went in from it, actually it came up to me, but it came from my earth line. So the earth line is again from the Earth Star chakra to the heart of the earth, okay? I've said this a million times already, so sorry if you've heard this 1,000,001 times now. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to present things, but I know that most people don't care about me repeating myself about this. So there's the earth line. In theory, what I find normally is when I have some emotional issue, something relatively, something relatively harmless, or it doesn't tend to be really people in there. It tends to be either impressions, energy, parts, ghosts, if you like, of people, parts of, most of which is completely harmless. It's just stuck in one way or another. And because I do this white light thing all the time, that is once a week or once every 2 weeks, whenever I visit, like I've described recently also, old churches and places like that, I tend to get stuck. I get, saddled with with energies from people that are apparently looking for the way out and they can't find it. It's something that happens to me. It's weird. What can I do? This is my lifestyle all year round. There's no Halloween for me. It's like this all the time. So normally I have like an issue with my, there's, a lack of inspiration, or I have a blockage of some sort. And then it is this earth line feels blocked. It feels like, okay, so I can do something useful there with my white light. down we go. And normally it feels, you could, just to compare, it feels like there is something in there, and the depth at which this intruder is sitting there is like maybe 10 meters or something. Just to have an idea, you know. So to compare the session that I did yesterday, it was more like, I don't know, 500 meters. To compare, it was insanely long and deep, and all this same fibrous dead material, and it was just sitting there. And I was going like, okay, so I always feel, whenever it isn't about having visited a church where there's, you know, spirits or something that wants to go, which I don't really need to, I only need to open a channel for them and off they go, you know, that happens occasionally. Normally it is vibrations that have to do with me, emotions that have to do with me. And it looked like, how I wrote it down eventually in my journal, it looks like this, what I had to do was to extract a whole massive network of basically vibrations that deny human existence, deny self. So sort of non-self vibrations. And it was all stuck in there. And it went down for centuries. It was, you know, the value of that kind of stuff for centuries. Now that I'm talking to you about this, I'm feeling like, okay, so this is probably going to come back to me and going to come, because, you know, I know there's more people out there who do this kind of work. Maybe not exactly in this way, they do it in another way, but they do it also to have the earth be rid, finally, you know, of these old vibrations. Doesn't matter how much you do it or how often you have to do it. Once you know how to do it, it's fine. You know, you have to figure out your own way. But the nature of the vibration, the nature of it wasn't even an emotion anymore. It was like a reflex, a set of reflexes that we have all encountered, all of us as human beings, not as shamans and magicians of this type of, where we, you know, interfere in the energies of the world. That's what I'm talking about at this point. But in the perspective where you're just a human being stuck with other humans, you know, we have had to deal with existence denying vibrations a lot. And so that was what I was looking at. And it took me an age and a half, or I think 15 minutes or so, but it felt like an age and a half of, you know, really going in there with that white light in order to just separate out enough of this stuff, you know, from the channel that is mine, from the body that is mine, from my aura, and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of it is gone now at this point, 24 hours later. I've, you know, it's mostly gone. But I remember very clearly what it felt like. And it wasn't, sometimes you can have energies in there that are actually an emotion of some sort. They actually resonate inside you, or they make you feel in a certain way. There's all sorts of things that can happen. This wasn't emotional at all. It was like, I'm going to say this, it was like the crystallized manifestation of what narcissism is an expression of in human life, in humanity, as it had grown, as it had accumulated over the centuries. So it gets pretty impersonal by then, you know. It doesn't really register as, oh my God, I'm in such trouble anymore. It only registers as nothing going on. And you would easily mistake the way I felt yesterday for a depressed state of mind, which I can accept for myself to a certain extent, you know, not every time and not for the rest of my life, because I have fought those types of emotions. I know by now for myself that if I feel depressed, there's a couple of reasons, there's a couple of things that can be going on. Either I have unresolved anger, you know, and fear issues with somebody, and that tends to come out relatively quickly nowadays because I'm having an open book with myself about these things. You know, I vlogged to you guys about this. I tell my husband everything that he doesn't want to hear. I go on. I'm always about that kind of stuff. If that's bothering you, just throw it out there. I don't, you know, I think that's only natural, and it's much better for everybody to know what's going on. And, you know, for you also to have a go at expressing what it is that's bothering you. The other half to the equation for a depressed state is a lack of energy. And there's a link between the two concepts, where one is, you know, anger, unresolved or even unconscious anger and fear on the one hand. On the other hand, lack of energy. The lack of energy can be the result of a blockage in energy due to anger that isn't allowed, you know, out. So there's that. And there's a whole lot more that can be going on. And once you start opening that kind of stuff up for yourself, you're in for a long haul, because it tends to not be about what you had for dinner last night. It tends to be about more important things and longer lasting things. And it tends to be about emotions and relationships. And it tends to go back half a century. So I'm just saying, okay? Not to discourage you, but it's a long haul. And it's worthwhile work, and I'm very proud of myself for doing it, because I'm actually alive, you know, which is not what the energy in the earth was saying yesterday that much. It is interesting to me to be able to see what this kind of vibration looks like from the outside and not feel attacked myself anymore at all, except to the extent that it was so stuck around me that I couldn't move anymore. So, which made me go like, okay, so I have to do something about this. I have to, it doesn't matter which energy there is. I just have to get rid of it if this is a negative energy, right? So I'm looking at the clock because, you know, I still have a piece or two about narcissism intel that I want to go into. I've been watching a lot of Sam Vaknin's videos recently, and he puts out a lot of new material all the time. But to me, I must say it's a bit much. Also because I take everything really word for word. I have to even take notes. The last session that I watched, I actually took notes because it was priceless in terms of getting to understand a couple of those really important mechanisms and confirming my vibrational analysis earlier, right? This whole fight that we humans have to exist properly. So you can see how this is also linked to Tumo and Kundalini Yoga. That's how it's all intertwined. It's one and the same huge, magnificent process that I get to experience and then here share with you as much as possible, where the enemy that I encounter is non-existence, basically. And that reminds me again of soul loss and soul retrieval. And I wonder if that's something that could be eventually made objective. Oh boy, how awesome would that be for people to do more with soul retrieval so that they could, you know, eventually even possibly escape from the narcissistic black hole if they're in it. You know, not the person who is under the power of the narcissist's approach to things. I'm thinking about the narcissists themselves. I don't mind calling myself, you know, to maybe 10% or so of a narcissist. Actually, I think that is quite okay and healthy for me to assume that I still have 10% old school distrust of people inside me. That's only safe to assume. There's 10% inside me that will probably always be there, that is distrusting of people, fearful, angry, and becomes, there's the other thing that I wanted to go into in this video for you, if it makes any sense, I hope, is that it's important to realize that there are millions of narcissistic behavior traits that are being exhibited out there and around us and inside ourselves all the time, where what we do is we fight for a false self. So a self that isn't really our own self. We fight for an identity or an identification instead of a self. That's one way of putting it, okay? However, there is a spectrum of where do you sit, or where does a person that you have to live with or deal with sit on the spectrum suddenly becomes the most important question. And there's a whole, helping on the left side, I would say, which is narcissism institutionalized, normalized by society, impersonal, historically grown, prejudice, things you're not allowed to think about, things you're not allowed to talk about, and so on and so forth. Things you're not allowed to feel. Where these days, 2020 is a really good year for that, and recently, over the past couple of years or so, people have been coming up more and more fighting for, this is my identity. I have to be this way, and I can't be any other way, and I can't live with people's assumptions and people's just squeezing me down like that. So there's this normalized shop on this side of the spectrum really also more or less validates darker, personal, narcissistic behavior traits over to this side of the spectrum, okay? So if you go all the way to the other side of the spectrum, completely to the other side, you would say that there are people who actually go off into malignancy. So they have transformed their absence of soul-filled beauty inside, transformed that into an actual active, very negative, very harmful set of behavior traits, okay? That's where you find the psychopathic part of humanity. That's where it's the same. I am posing here, and I'm not the first one to do this, that is actually one large spectrum, and the traits are often the same. If you go down in history and you see what people have done to each other, you will see it's all the same. It's one and the same. A lot of the people who are powerful that I mentioned earlier in my earlier videos about this theme, that we listen to, that we assume are powerful, that we think of, people that we think of as powerful, right? They appeal to this side of us, to this I'm not allowed to exist kind of a side inside of us, inside here. So because we do not have the soul power, the power of the soul inside us to move away from all those kinds of things, or even we expect ourselves, in a very grandiose manner to be able to, in our minds, we think like, okay, I should be able to say no to this person. I should be able to, because my mind tells me it's the right thing to do. But quite often we can't, because there's other parts inside of us and the story isn't finished. The process isn't finished. We're still in the middle of it. So in this whole spectrum thing, I think that there are people who are narcissists, but they're not dangerous. So there's a distinction right there. The person who is the main source of my narcissistic pain that I had, the pain from the narcissist world that I inherited to a large extent, it looks like from both my parents. The person who was the most, for lack of a better word, powerful in that respect was somebody who actually had sadistic traits. So he went quite a bit over to that side. The twist to my life, the pain and the oppression that I have felt as a result of all this, all this happened actually during the 60s and 70s of the last century. That was a period, if you go and look at the movies I just watched, a couple of documentaries about movies about witches, it was all very cool but very well done. If you look at the movies in those times and you see the opinions how that's represented, how people thought of women, how mostly men used an incredibly pathological set of assumptions, to dominate their social lives around them in those days. I was born in 1966, so I've hardly experienced any of this myself, except as a little child on the receiving end of result of processes after, in a later cycle after that. I've never really taken anything. I've never taken anybody seriously who, in those days when I was growing up, say a little bit later than that, end of the 70s, early 80s, who said to me that I was a woman, ergo I didn't have a brain or something like that. I've always felt like, okay, you just go ahead. I'm very sorry that you have to think that way. Turns out that this is institutionalized narcissism, as it was in the 50s and 60s. And if you revisit any of that, you just blanch with horror. It's awful. There's lots and lots of people still alive today who've actually experienced this. So you cannot expect yourself to fully, energetically, vibrationally transform into this, which is what some people are trying to sell to you, that you should just transform into this indigo angel of kindness and compassion and make all this not have happened. I mean, I think there's another narcissistic world approach right there, where it's not going to work. So you cannot tell people, if you only do this, that and the other, then you will be an indigo blue angel for the rest of your life, and you will be pleasantly unable to be disturbed by madness and sadness and badness. So what else was there? Yeah, it depends on the person, where exactly they are. Some people can be difficult to communicate with, difficult to interact with, because what you need to know is that there is a stronger. They don't come with their own hats or with purple glasses, but you can tell, okay, so this is a narcissist of this type or of that type, and I need to adapt my MO to that person. So you can only work with people the way they are, and then after a while you notice that some interactions get weird and consistently. And there's a whole tale that I should be telling, which I won't do at this point because half an hour, yes, more than half an hour. I will just leave it very soon. I will buckle this up. But there's differences in how unreliable they get, and I think all you have really is your gut feelings. What do you expect? Basically, what do you expect from a person? And if you expect too much, how is that going to hurt you? And so there can be there's loads of situations where a person is limited in their manner of interaction in a way that is definitely that would definitely qualify as them having some type of they've got a problem in that area, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily immediately perpetrators. So I've been into this whole jam of these videos about narcissism also because I want to go against, for some reason, I want to make them be alive, if possible, especially when they don't want to be alive anymore. I'm hearing myself say this and going, oh my God, how is this actually a thing? Yes, because the non-existence thing it's as old as the world. And I think Plato has written about this. I remember studying Plato when I was in high school, and there's all that stuff, except it was very theoretical back in those days. Boy, I didn't know what was coming from me, didn't I? So you have to, I suppose you have to not be scared. You have to examine your own expectations of what it is that you really want and need. And often I think that where it goes wrong is that we have these massive expectations of people. And I know that with my own husband, I'm going to just drag that in here and then buckle up. I always had these massive expectations of him because I kind of knew his personality well enough that I could see that he had so many good qualities. So it was a matter of getting the vanished twin thing out in the open. And that has changed him and the way he behaves and the way he interacts with me and the way he goes about things and the way he lives his life 100%. And that's possible. I think that is the whole vanished twin thing is never incorporated in a discussion of narcissistic behavior traits. Why? Because it's too new. All that is just not considered. It becomes too complicated or what. So because of the energy work thing that I'm in, with my Tumo and all the rest of it, I apparently, and what with my heritage of crazy ass weirdo shit going on and things I've complained about on my channel since forever, I am a person who will actually put these things together in the same frame, like this. There's the behavior traits of this person who's really shut in, who's really who feels like there's nobody home, he's really inside at a complete loss to feel his true self. That was me until recently. But I did a soul retrieval. So there's that. And then I had to deal with a husband who's a womb twin survivor, and there was soul loss there as well. So there's a whole soul connection that we're not seeing that can be, mapped out in all sorts of ways. I'm going to buckle this up right here and upload it as is. Thank you so much for watching. I have to go and peel potatoes now. Wish me luck, and I am wishing you all the best. And we're going to have mushroom season soon, so I will be taking you out to see mushrooms, okay? Because you can't always do the serious, difficult things. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And see you next time, okay? Bye-bye for now.